Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the newly revealed Flask Oriath's End, which was designed by Steel Mage and drops from Uber Cirrus. This Flask has just prompted me to just randomly make this video because it is so ridiculously overpowered and build defining, meta defining, game warping that it is going to be a truly phenomenal experience to kind of play the first league with it available. It is so ridiculously overpowered that we're gonna have to talk about it in this video, man. All right, so let's get into it. What does it do? All right, so first of all, it's a bismuth flask, which has a really long duration, 8.5 seconds. It's got increased charge recovery for whatever reason, but the main line here is enemies you kill during effect have a 28% chance to explode, dealing a 1/10 of their maximum life as damage of a random element. So a random element means fire, cold, or lightning. Now, this is one of the most powerful mechanics in Path of Exile, full stop. Explode was so strong that it actually enabled entire build archetypes and even made things like melee, of all things, viable. Now, it was so powerful that it actually had to be nerfed pretty much into oblivion and obscurity. The only places that you can get any sort of true explode is on synthesized implicit weapons, which are so hard to craft they're generally relegated to the mirror tier category, and influenced chests, which have a chance to explode as well. Now, the influence chests are a little bit more accessible, but they're notoriously hard to craft, and they also like kind of remove your ability to go for an Eldritch implicit chest, which are very powerful and way easier to craft. Now, this one flask has a modifier on it, which is basically equal to either an explodey weapon, which we just talked about, or an explodey chest, and it's just a flask. And in addition to that, you can scale this flask with Flask Effect, quite easily in fact. There's tons of nodes on the tree which can easily take this thing up to 40% chance to explode and beyond. And if you play a Pathfinder, it can go even higher. And if you heavily invest into it, I wouldn't be surprised if you're hovering anywhere between, you know, the 50-ish plus point of explode chance. Now, I'd say that you're probably going to be more around the 40% chance on every mapper that you're going to be using this with. But, you know, I think that's probably what you would kind of go with there. Now, let's talk a little bit about, you know, just why this would be so meta defining. So the number one problem for all mapping skills, which aren't, you know, like Blade Vortex or Tornado Shot, well, not even Blade Vortex, pretty much just like Tornado Shot or like Venom Gaia, those two pretty much, is that they just don't really have that good clear mechanics. They're just not that effective of clearing large chunks of monsters. And in the past, Explode basically completely solved that for a number of builds. You know, if you go back in time to Harvest League, you could even see Mathel playing like double strike with Explode, and the clear was ridiculous, right? Just because he had Explode. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be, you know, like truly obnoxious on every single build because it is elemental damage. You do need to have a way to scale the damage that it's dealing, and it's all three of the different elements randomly. And that's definitely going to be a little bit difficult to scale, like traditionally, like, you know, if you're a cold damage build and you don't scale any fire or lightning, you'll be missing out a little bit there. But if you're scaling generic elemental damage, then that's kind of where it really shines. Now, what is particularly crazy about this, though, is that there is an item in the game which directly scales elemental damage and is part of some of the most powerful mapping archetypes, and that is Omniscience. Omniscience is still very strong, and it is going to give you a ton of elemental penetration of all three elements, which, you know, synergizes very well with Oriath's End. I imagine you're probably going to be seeing a ton of builds in the new expansion sporting an Oriath's End and some form of Omniscience setup. Whether it's Blade Vortex, Cyclone, bow builds, Winter Orb, you know, anything, you name it, it's probably going to have some form of a build kind of focused around it, and it's going to have screen-wide AoE pretty much guaranteed with this thing, as long as you got a bit of Flask effect. Now, the other obvious dynamic here is that you do need to scale a bit of AoE. We don't know the radius on this, but, you know, if it's anything like traditional Explode, then it should be a pretty large radius as well to boot. Okay, so let's kind of move on here now. Actually, I do want to mention one more thing. I think that Void Forge Forge, melee builds or Cyclone builds will probably be pretty popular, especially with Oriath's End, because Oriath's End is going to solve your clears problems, and then Void Forge kind of could solve your single target problems. You know, see, like the Tri-Ellie archetype, yeah, it's looking pretty good, man. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about where this thing drops. All right, it drops from Uber Cirrus, which is probably one of the harder Uber bosses to, you know, definitely, most likely, one of the hardest. You know, pretty damn hard. And I would have to guess it's probably going to have anywhere between a 1 to 2% drop rate from Uber Cirrus, maybe even rarer than that. It is just on that power level, just so obnoxiously overpowered, it's just ridiculous. So yeah, it's probably going to cost around 50 to 150 divines off of Uber Cirrus, if I had to guess. It's one of those items, one of the items that every build can in theory use and will want to use. It's like Mage Blood level kind of rarity here, so it's probably going to command that kind of a price. Absolutely. It's also build enabling, build defining, and meta defining. All right, so what is this going to do to the economy? Let's talk a little bit about that, because it is going to warp the economy somewhat around it. So everything that feeds into Uber Cirrus is going to probably be quite expensive. Imagine if Headhunter just randomly dropped off Uber Cirrus instead. It's going to be that kind of a situation, unless this thing's super duper common off him, which, you know, I doubt. Unless it's super duper common, it's going to like jack up the prices, everything Cirrus related. So the first thing that's going to happen is that you're probably not going to be able to farm Cirrus, like normal Cirrus, ever again, pretty much. It's going to be exclusively Uber Cirrus, because, you know, you're losing so much potential of Oriath's End if you're not doing the Uber version. So that's probably going to happen. And in addition to that, the Uber Cirrus sets are probably going to be, you know, ridiculously expensive, if I had to guess, because people are going to try and take a punt, take a gamble, and try and get an Oriath's End. And, you know, that's probably going to be where it's going. Uber Cirrus already did have a pretty good drop in the massive Thread of Hope, and then now that he also has the buffed Savior, so, you know, it's oh man, it's looking like a pretty stacked boss. Yeah, so anything that kind of generates Conqueror maps, I would have to imagine is going to be very expensive. Now, one thing that does generate those, you know, quite a lot is compasses and sextants, because they give you a guaranteed chance at a Conqueror map of the bosses. And by extension of that, I have to imagine then the Harvest Life Force will become more expensive as well, because it allows you to perpetuate that effect infinitely, which is, you know, obviously going to be pretty damn strong as well. So I imagine that both Harvest and anything related to compasses or sextants is probably going to skyrocket in price in the new league as well, all because of this Flask. So yeah, there is a lot going on here, man. I am so excited. I cannot wait to use this. I'm going to be using it on every single map that I make, most likely, unless I'm trying to, you know, make a guide on it, because there's no way this is going to be cheap. But hopefully you guys are as excited as I am. You know, this, oh, man, you can do so much with it. Even Ignite Prolift builds want this thing, man. It's crazy. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.